Welcome to the All About Set Work podcast. In this podcast, we talk about all things set work, head and code training tips, a behind-the-scenes look at what your instructor or trial official may be going through, and much more. In this episode, we have the distinct privilege of having a roundtable discussion all about expectations when you are entering a nosework trial. Ooh. Before we start diving into the podcast episode itself, let me do a very quick introduction on myself. My name is Dianna Santos. I am the owner and lead instructor for Setwork University, Dog Sport University, and Pet Dog U. These are all online dog training platforms that are designed to provide high-quality dog training instruction, and we're very fortunate to have a client base that's worldwide. For Setwork University in particular, we provide online courses, seminars, webinars, and ebooks that are all designed to help you achieve your Setwork training goals. So whether you're just getting started in Setwork, you're looking to develop some more advanced skills, or if you're getting ready for trial, we have a training solution for you. So now you know a little bit more about me, let's dive into the podcast episode itself. So we're very fortunate that in this podcast episode, we have a roundtable discussion, diving all into dealing with expectations when you're entering a nosework trial. Very exciting stuff. This roundtable is actually headed by one of our instructors, Michelle Doram, and she does an excellent job. This wonderful array of perspectives. And they really do provide some excellent information in this podcast. So I'm not going to delay any longer. We're just going to jump right into the conversation so you guys can hear all the things that they have to say, because I think that it's really powerful stuff. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank sincerely Michelle for putting this all together, because it's a wonderful topic that I think all of you will be able to contribute to. We like to do these roundtables. We're hearing all these different opinions and point of views about a variety of different topics. And Michelle had this really fantastic idea about expectations. So that's what this episode is going to be all about. Could we just go around really quickly and just do a really quick introduction, your name, who you are, and just a really quick background? And maybe we'll go in this order. We'll do Michelle really quickly, then we'll do Monica, Jessica, and Jill.
My name is Michelle Doram. I'm a CNWI, CO in training, 10-year competitor, 12-year student of nosework.
Okay, Monica?
Hi, I'm Monica Flores, and I am a nosework competitor for 10 years now.
Perfect. And Jessica?
My name is Jessica Koester. I'm also a CNWI. I've also been competing in nosework for 10 years, and I'm in the COT program with Michelle.
Perfect. And Miss Jill?
I'm Jill Marie O'Brien. I've been a dog trainer and behavior counselor, shelter person for 35 plus years. I'm co-founder of National Association of Canine Scent Work and Canine Nose Work. And that's it.
It's just that, right? It's just those small things. All right, Michelle, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'd like to talk today about expectations for handlers when it comes to trialing, what we expect of ourselves, of our dogs, of our trial experience. So I wanted to gather a panel of people of vast and varied experience so they could share some of their own. Jessica, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
What were your expectations with your first dog when you began trialing?
Geez, okay, so 10 years ago. I think it's really actually a good question, because thinking back on it now, I don't actually remember what my expectations were, because I think I was so caught up in the moment that the first dog I trial with, who I still trial with, was dog reactive and environmentally sensitive. So I think those two things played a big role for me, because my goal in joining nosework originally was just to kind of help him get over his fear of new environments and novel stimuli, and to teach him a little bit of focus, at least back to me, and on his environment in a way that was safe for him. So when we actually got to competition, once I was able to get my trial nerves under control, and for me, that trial nerves, that very first trial was, please don't let my dog bark at another dog. Because I was so terrified. It's like, oh my God, they're going to see him. He's going to bark, and that's going to be the end of our career. And I really want him to do this. We had tried agility at that point, and he was such a nut. He couldn't stand watching other dogs play in the agility field. And then he would get out there, and he was a course designer, so it was not a good fit. But once we actually got in, and he decided that other dogs weren't as a high priority as it was getting into new areas to use his nose and work, he settled down and we started having a whole lot of fun. So my goal was never getting a ribbon. It was just to see if we could even compete and do anything and see how well we fared as a team.
Very interesting. So your personal goal wasn't about achieving a title. It was about the steps that you had worked toward for him to get through the day under threshold.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, for us, we trained here locally in San Diego, and I was mentoring under Jamie Bosey at the time. So she was really good at getting access to new locations for us to try. So I was able to introduce him there, but then I would travel up to Penny in Pasadena, did that for a little bit. And our first ORT was actually up in LA. And I think it was the Bushes. I think that was who was judging for us there in LA at the shelter at the time. And then our second ORT was at Penny. So his first ORT, he was so close. He nailed Anise, I want to say, but then missed Clove because he, for whatever reason, just kind of like this, he was 6 months old and did his own thing. But at Birch, he realized Chris was behind the camera, and Chris stood up and was like, I've never seen a man that tall. And he kind of like freaked out at that and was like, I'm just going to go sit down behind mom. And so I was like, okay, we might need some more time. So we took another 6 months before we did our next
Good
ORT.
for you.
So yeah, I mean,
Good for
for
you.
us, it was just to try and get him over his fears.
Thank you. That's very interesting perspective that I think not a lot of people take into consideration, that sometimes it's really just about developing the dog's coping skills.
Right.
Monica, tell us what your expectations were with your first dog when you began trialing.
First, I decided that I wanted to do some type of fun sport with this dog, because I had also had a reactive dog before. I had a Springer Spaniel that was in the cuckoo rage range, right? So I got this Labrador, and I'm like, we're going to do everything. We're going to do everything we couldn't do before. We're going to do all kinds of sports. We're going to be in public places. We're going to do everything. You know, I'd taken him to obedience class, and my instructor said, why don't you see about taking a nose work class? And I'm like, okay, what's that? I just ran onto NACSW website, and I'm like, well, let's just find a trainer that's nearby. Pasadena's right down the road. So I went to Penny's class, signed up, and I told her, we know everything about searching and stuff. We've been doing some tracking with treats and stuff. So you can just let me skip the first couple classes. I don't need that. So anyway, that didn't work. So we went to all the classes, and
there you are in an intro class.
Yeah. And then she's like, you have to become like a member of this organization, and you need to, you're going to sign up and you're going to take a test. And I'm like, oh no, we're just here to have fun. We're just here to have fun. This is my Labrador, and he's just going to search, and we're just going to have fun. She's like, yeah, I know, but this is part of it, is you sign up and you take this test for this ORT test, and then you go to competitions. I'm like, oh, no. That's not what I'm doing. So anyway, I did sign up. I took the ORT test, and I can remember how scared I was and stressful. Like, there's a judge and they're watching you. And anyway, I kept doing it, because every time you did something, it was like, wow, that was pretty fun. And it just kept raising the bar of, where are we going with this? And I would tell myself, we're just here to have fun. We're not serious about that. We're not going to be crazy like these people who get these car covers and fans and crates and all that. I'm like, I'm not doing that. No, this is for fun. So I bought my dog a collar that has like little cupcakes on it. So if you ever hear his nickname, Rudy Cupcake, that's what it was, to not show that I was serious about this. This was just for fun, for me and my dog to get out, to go do these activities, to enjoy a fun sport. Nothing about competition. We weren't going to do anything like that to be, competitive. It was just for fun.
When you did start
Yes.
trialing, like NW1, right? Like, it's a real trial now.
Mm-hmm.
What were your
Right.
expectations as far as outcome?
I didn't have any expectations, really. All I did was, I'm like, because I didn't know anything really about odor, only what you had learned in your basic classes. And they would say, watch your dog. And I'm like, my eyes are watching him, but you have, it takes a lot of time to learn what do these behaviors mean, right?
Yeah.
I'm watching him, and I kept thinking, I'm watching him. He's in this room and he's doing some stuff. And then he just points to this object and tells me it's here, right? So if I just hang on to the leash, I surely can't screw up. Okay.
When you have a
So
reactive dog and someone says, watch your dog, you're like, oh no, what are they going to react to now? It's funny how even just those phrases mean different things to different teams. Thank you.
Yes.
Jill Marie, how about for you? What were your expectations when you trialed with your first dog?
Well, are you talking about nose work that I expect?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's funny because, as a person that was at the beginning of this whole thing before there was a sport, and I was, running, a narcotics dog and doing certifications there. The interesting piece is that they're very similar in the fact of the testing piece, right? It's my mindset is kind of the same. So I think the expectations, regardless of whatever dog that I go in, it's an evaluation of in my mind of where I am in my training and things that I'm supposed to be working on. Because I look at trialing as an example of what I need to be working on for training.
I love that.
Not that training. It's not about training so I can trial. Trialing should be an evaluation of where my training is, because sort of in my perspective, it's the training and it's the day-to-day with the dog that is the fun part, and the growth and the relationship building on a daily basis should be the focus. And it's not that I like competing. I like pretty ribbons, whether it's in nose work or other things. I mean, I got ribbon behind me. It's fun. They make nice decorations when you can't think of other things to do with your space. It's like they're fun and they're important, and it tells you where you're at. And
it's a marker of your progress.
And they have value. They have value for people, and it gives people a sense of accomplishment. And it, and it's for all of us that way. But to me, trialing is more about where training is. And so on the last trial that I did, it's interesting because, I think back to my first nosework trial, feeling really odd as sort of the founder running my dog. And in my mind, I think I just want to go have fun with my dog. I don't want to be this person that's Jill, the founder, her dogs are going to be perfect, her handling's perfect, nothing's ever going to go wrong, she'll always do this, it'll always be this. I actually used to be an agility person that just liked to go and hang out in the park and run my dog, and I kind of miss that. And so part of the nose work piece that I like is like the hanging out and just sitting in my chair with my dogs and going and doing searches, chatting with friends. And it's a social piece, not as an official, but as a participant, and enjoying this thing that was sort of developed. That's kind of my expectations from the first trial that I kind of did, just to see what it's like for the people that have invested their time and money to kind of jump onto this crazy train that we developed. Right. And because I want people to have good experiences and feel what it is from their perspective. Also on an instructor standpoint, since that's really my area of focus, is how do we nurture and support people that are teaching other people so that they're developing and helping their students achieve their goals, and to know what it's like from that perspective. So, for me, it's a kind of a very complicated, mixed up thing, more than just a person that might be going to compete. So it's a little bit more it's probably a little bit more complex.
It is, but that's what makes your perspective so interesting. And I love that you feel that your trial experiences are markers of your training and your indications for your training goals. I think that's great.
Which is good and bad, by the way.
Well, I think that it's a refreshing perspective. And I mean, obviously, as a founder, it gives significant weight coming from you, but I always appreciate it when people view the trial experience as not being an indicator of their worth, you know, like, but really just a test to see where you are on the skills that you've been developing for that particular level. Monica, when you began trialing a new dog, what expectations did you then have, which may have been based on trial experience with your first dog?
Having many years of success with my first dog, who was so forgiving of all of my stupid handling moves, I automatically put expectations on this new dog, which is also a Labrador. Like, it's going to be a piece of cake. For God's sake, you succeeded with this dog. All you got to do is do the same thing with this new dog. And we're going to have the most fun. And, you know, my new dog started training at a younger age. So I thought, we're going to learn all the new things. We're going to learn all this new ways of training, the nose work. And it's going to be the most phenomenal, you know, a journey we've ever had.
You figured, I've learned so much from my first dog. It's just going to be lickety split.
It's going to be the most wonderful. Well, that is not at all how it panned out. So we went to our first couple trials, and we were having, you know, it's a time to, like Jill said, you've trained, and now you're going to take like this test, and it's going to be fun because it tells you where you're at. And we had some interesting things happen in these trials that I didn't even know what to do with. My younger dog decided to pick up some toys in a classroom and toss them around and goof off during a search. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? This is serious stuff. We're here. We've got a time clock going. We timed out and didn't find anything, like, because he was playing around. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is, we need some help. We need some help. There's something really wrong here. I felt frustration because I felt like I was actually thinking that this dog didn't even really like nose work, that maybe he wanted to do something else. Maybe he wants to be a therapy dog. Maybe he wants to just hang out at home. Maybe he doesn't even like searching. I think he doesn't like searching because he does great, seems like, in practice. But when we go to something like this, he checks out. He checks out. Like, he's like, yeah, see ya. So I said, I need some help. I'm really feeling like I either have to find this dog's going to go live with my daughter, or I'm going to get another dog or something. He's not for me. We're not a team. We're not understanding.
You weren't in sync.
We weren't in sync because, you know, you train them all this puppy stuff, and then, you know, you need to find the hides. Okay, they go find a hide, but sometimes he just checked out. So I sought out input from a highly respected trainer, instructor would be Amy Hero. And I said, I need some help. I need to see, I need you to watch us search, and I need to know, like, does this dog have it or not, right? And is it me? What's going on here? So she said, okay, I'll set up a couple hides here, and let's just see what's going on. And so I'm like, okay, Ben, come on. Let's search, you know, kind of a little bit of a stern voice, because I know everything, right? And she goes, she watches, and then he gets there, and, you know, it's like, okay, it's right here. And she goes, wow, I want you to, when he gets to the hide, to just I want his tail to wag. I want you to get his tail to wag, whatever it is. And she goes,
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Your tone of voice, I noticed that you're a little more abrupt with him than you are with your Rudy Cupcake. So maybe, use a sweeter tone of voice and get his tail to wag. So, we did a couple more searches, and when he found the hide, I was like giving him all, his tail was wagging. He was like, woohoo, this is awesome. And I can tell you, his eyes were sparkling. He looked at me and he acted like I was the best thing on this earth, the best. And it was a magical moment that was life-changing, just that. And it changed everything from that moment on, was just really engaging with the dog and playing the game. I wanted to play, but I was playing it the way I played with my other dog, right? And it didn't work. It didn't work.
And when it wasn't going how you thought it should go, you got stricter and stricter.
Yes, I started wrangling him. I started wrangling this.
You're not going to pick up toys.
Like,
you're not going to, you're going to do this. You're going to do that.
You need to get to the corners. You need to get over here. Why aren't you searching over here? And he was just going, yeah, I don't like this game with you.
He was sitting back with his arms crossed. And then when you had a shift in what the reward was for him, meaning you being happy with him and you being proud and engaging with him instead of telling him where to go.
Yes.
That shifted everything. And what I think is really, really significant about this experience for you is that you had such a long road to, this is a completely different Labrador. And that's really difficult for people. They get the same breed, they get well-bred chosen dogs, or they get a new dog that, came from a rescue group, or their daughter's dog, or, people get dogs in all different kinds of ways. But if they've done nose work before, sometimes their expectations can be really, really affected by their experience with the first dog. Thank you so much for that. I think that experience is pretty profound, that you learned him in such a different way.
Yes, I'm still learning, and there's more that we have done over the last year that's changed everything about our journey. And I'm thankful. I'm so thankful for those moments that we had, that, he did these things. He was telling me, we're going to play a game, but we're going to play it my way. He was giving me all kinds of indications. And because of my frustrations, I seeked out help. And I'm
glad you did.
It was all a game changer.
That's great.
Completely.
Jill Marie, I remember many years ago, not even sure if you remember this, during a morning trial briefing, you said, quote, "Your disappointment is not your dog's problem," to the group. Could you please elaborate on what may have prompted this statement? Perhaps handler behavior you may have observed?
I think what I often see happen is that many times in trial situations, or whether it's even in the middle of a search, we hear, maybe, a handler hears the word no, or even at the end of the day, they realize they didn't earn something that they feel maybe they deserved, or are disappointed by a lack of, a title, or whatever the case. More times than not, it's usually in the middle of a trial day where they realize that they're not going to earn their title, or they've heard that no, and they feel disappointed, right? And now they're carrying this disappointment, but what often happens is they make their disappointment their dog's problem. And, it's not your dog's problem that if you're disappointed because you misread a dog's communication, if your training wasn't clear enough leading up to the trial, so the dog had a good enough understanding of what your expectations are going to be in any given situation, that the dog knew what its task was going to, what its job was going to be as far as in the search environment. So there's a lot of things that contribute to why you might hear no, or you might have, a bad day. And as handlers, and I think even Monica, in her sort of describing her rocky start and relationship with her second dog, she was making her disappointment in some way Ben's responsibility because he wasn't Rudy. So even in day-to-day life, how we feel about any given dog, whether they don't live up to our expectations, when expectations are not met, that breeds disappointment. Disappointment can even feed resentment. Resentment then feeds, how we treat or dismiss, or can become even more negative, and that becomes the dog's problem. And none of us are immune to these things, when none of us we're all human. But I think we have to at least try in those moments when we feel that happening to catch ourselves. Even when you hear when a judge goes no and you go, like you make that, the dog has no idea that that's not actually directed at them. The dog doesn't understand that when they've just performed a behavior and your response to that behavior is something that maybe in other contexts in their world is negative, not a pleasant response, is now being associated with something. And maybe, that's not necessarily something you want, because it could create some other peripheral issues. There are all these things that are going on. And when I say you can't let your disappointment become your dog's problem, it's meaning like, don't let that create additional issues that blossom into full-blown problems that then you have. The whole point should always be is to not fit. And I'm the queen of having to clean up messes because I skipped I'm like everybody, like my time is limited. I'll just go fast. This is not important. I'll just do this once and he got it. We'll move on. And then 6 years later, I'll be back. Like, remember 6 years ago when I was doing the thing and I skipped the thing, or I only did the thing once, and now I can see why I shouldn't have skipped the thing. That's not the dog's problem. That's my problem. So my disappointment is not the dog's issue. That's my issue. So,
and it becomes a cycle.
It becomes a cycle. And then what we often do is we start overtraining.
And overcompensating.
And we overcompensate and we browbeat our dog into training submission. And I don't mean that in submissiveness, but I mean, it's like we start overtraining to the point of where dogs are not having fun anymore. And I think this is why we see dogs at NW1 or ORT level are coming up that are rock star search dogs. They're having a great time. And you're like, oh my God, the dog's having so much fun. Look at that dog's a search machine. Da, 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 da. They hit NW3. The handlers have gotten the bug and they start taking a lot of input from all these different places that are from different methodologies and things without a lot of context and life experience in detection and search work to know where and when to plug these things in. And then they start hitting roadblocks because they don't know when things are best applied. And then they hit roadblocks, right? And then they start overtraining. And now the dog's like, that was a really fun game, like a year ago or 2 years ago. And I'm kind of not liking it anymore. And they come in and they're like, they'll do it, but they can take it or leave it. And the way I describe it is the difference between the first day on the job, your dream job, and after being there for 20 years, and you're like the last 2 weeks after giving notice, you're retiring, and the type of performance you're going to give that first day on your dream job versus your last 2 weeks are going to be completely different. And I want my dog ideally to be as close to what it is on that first day, not the last 2 weeks.
They should get enough appreciation and bonuses and vacation time along the way to keep them happy.
Yeah. And, and you have to, and going back to expectations, and I'll wrap this piece up in a moment, is, we all also have to be realistic when we don't have a lot of time to train, or our dogs are going through other things, they're aging, or they have injuries, or, and again, be realistic. If you're not able to train every day, or, be that diligent, or whatever the case may be, you have to manage your expectations going into a trial and not have that disappointment eat at your own soul about what happens, because that is not healthy for yourself as a handler. Because if you're not training every day, or other things are going on, especially if you have a younger dog, if you have an older dog that's got a lot of life experience, you can get away with a little bit more, I think, with some dogs. But you have to be cognizant of the realities of what you can do. And somebody that has an older dog who has experience, that I ride on his coattails, because he's got more experience. Like, he carried me to this last NW3 title, not because my handling was great. It was like we squeezed by, but it's his age and experience. But we're not training enough for me to have an expectation of taking first place. And I think people need to be realistic about where they're at in their training, and where their dogs are at physically and age-wise, also, and manage that going into a trial. And if you can't manage it, then don't, and you get really disappointed, don't enter.
That's a great point.
Jill, can I comment on that too?
Yeah.
So with my guy, Yuri, I mean, he's old now, like 10 years old. He's starting to look gray around the eyes and everything. But I have 2 young kids and one with special needs. So I hardly ever get a chance to train my dogs at all. And like, I've had to explain that to a couple of my different clients, because most of my clients are all dog reactive dogs. And I've got 1 or 2 who want to compete and actually can, because their dogs are appropriate for it. But I've kind of told them, like, hey, you can enter a trial whenever, you think you're ready. And I will be honest with you and tell you, yes, I think you're ready, or no, you're not. And I will be very honest with them and say, I would love to get an NW3 on my boy Yuri, and only one. And honestly, I don't know if we're going to get it before he passes or not, but that's my goal. And my goal is a trial, just because we don't have the time to train, nor do I have the time to enter trials at this point in our life with everything going on. So honestly, it's one of those things that I think is sometimes a hard pill to swallow for some people, like having to learn how to manage those expectations and not go and being like, yeah, I'm going to nail it on my first trial here, there, and everywhere. And I know that we may or may not touch on it later, but I've always tried to train Yuri up to the trial level that he's attaining. And we were lucky for our NW1, NW2. We got it on our first try, but now we've done 5 or 7 NW3s, and I'm hoping to get enough legs to put together an NW3. But hey, like that was one of those things where I have to learn how to manage those expectation points. And after I had child number 2, like that really came into focus and kind of hit home for me. But I think it was an important lesson for me to learn, both as a handler and as an instructor, for sure.
I think it's so subjective, right? Like, it's different for everyone's experience, but how people deal with the expectations and sometimes the lessons that they have to go through can be pretty major. But I love being able to share it with other people, because as an instructor, I see quite a range as a volunteer, I see quite a range, of what people imagine is going to happen on a given trial day. But Jessica, something you said actually leads into the next question that I have, and that was about readiness. As a competitor, do you prefer to wait to trial until your teamwork and skills with your dog are fully ready, like capital letters ready, or give it a shot and see where you are in your training?
For me personally, I like to make sure that I'm ready. And that probably stems the fact that Uriel is a red bandana dog. So I want to go into trial with a clear idea or a clear picture of what I think is going to happen, and kind of be able to manage some of those expectations that we've been talking about a little bit with him.
That makes sense.
However, I now have a puppy that I'm working with, and she's polar opposite of him. So everything that I've had to do with Uriel is like not a problem for her. And it kind of blows me away, because I've done a couple of nose work lessons with her, and I'm like, oh, wow, you mean like that dog who got out of his car and jumped all over that place didn't distract her? She kept working through that. Like, that would have been the end of the world for Uriel at that point. So
now you get to learn dog number 2.
Yeah, now I'm learning dog number 2, who doesn't have some of the same problems that Yuri does. And it's a really different picture. So for her, if I was going to trial her, I might be more willing to be like, we've trained for a little bit. Let's see where we're at.
There's a local event I can go. My kids are taken care of. Yeah,
exactly. Sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on that. It's just interesting to me to hear different people's different perspectives on that. Jill, what is your personal approach? Ready in all caps, or see where you are in your training?
Oh, so going back, I think it depends. If everybody hates that phrase at this point, but
no, I don't hate it.
Ideally, you should go into anything you're doing feeling relatively confident that you can manage the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're going to go in there and there's always some people that are like, I never enter anything unless I think I'm going to win first place.
Yeah, that's kind of the extreme I was referring to.
Right.
All
and
caps.
You know what? Awesome. Great. If that's how you operate, that's great. I think it's great when you're the only competitor. I think it's great when it's when you're not, because here's the reality. If it's a one man, one woman event where you're not working with another individual, I think you are not necessarily putting all of the weight of what your expectations are not just their responsibility. And yes, you can train your dog to be top notch and always win and blah, 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 blah. But I don't know, maybe it's an age thing, because I used to think differently, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but I have an issue with animals as sports equipment, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get your rocks off by getting a first place and you go through dogs like you do Nike, runners, I'm at the age of my life where I have an ethical problem kind of with that. And now I get, like, if you get a dog and you want to do agility and you really feel that your lifestyle traveling around, the dog would be miserable because it hates riding in cars, maybe rehoming that dog would be ideal. But if it's you go through like 10 dogs in 2 years because each one can't meet your like wanting to win first place expectations, but that's a whole nother broadcast. But speaking to your question, I think if you can at least handle the situation and feel like you're ready for just the dynamics of the trial environment and the competitive environment, and that whatever happens, good or bad, that you can manage that, I think it's okay. I think if you're so not ready that you're taking a valuable spot that are limited when you have long wait lists, not that everybody has a right to enter and take the spot, but you should think about whether there is somebody that really is ready that could use that spot. You know, like, I'm a little conflicted there personally, honestly, but I think, sometimes you just have to do it. And I think there are people that will never enter because like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready. I don't know. My dog's never done a hide 2 feet off the ground in a corner. And until we really get that perfectly under our belt, I don't know, you're never going to be able to do everything. So you do have to sometimes just put yourself out there and see where you are at. And oftentimes you surprise yourself because those are the trials you do the best at.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Nothing's risk-free. Nothing is ever risk-free in life. And I think that's what Jill's kind of saying. Like, you have to sometimes be willing to take that risk or go
exactly.
in hopefully a low level of risk.
You want to be trained well enough to mitigate the risk, but you're never going to be 100% safe. Right. So,
yeah,
right.
I mean, our best trial was our NW2, and we magically somehow took first place overall high at trial, and it shocked me. And it's forever like my favorite day. And my goal was just to, hey, pass interiors that day, because that had been our big holdup at that point. So whatever.
Hey, I went to this last NW3 just hoping that if we could get 50% without having trained in months and months and months with a dog with a sciatic nerve and compressed disc in his spine that he's trying to work with, he still wants to search. I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. If we get 50%, he'll have a good day out. And he got 100 points and an NW3 title. So, what
good
are you
boy.
Gonna do? He's a good boy. That's age.
That's right.
Monica, do you feel like you are a person who waits until you're ready, in all caps, bold, or do you enter and see where you are in your training?
Well, it depends. So normally for everything, I like to be prepared. I really do. That's just how I am. So if I can ask myself some questions, well, have you trained at this level?
Let's assume that you have trained at the level. Would you then break it down to not until we can crush it and place, well, we've trained at the level. Let's see if it shows us where we need to train more.
I would enter the trial, and once I removed expectations from my equation of this nose work journey, things changed for me and our relationship. So that's not even anything in my equations. When we go to a competition, it's to go have fun. It's to use the skills that we've learned.
Because you are practicing for the next level all the time anyway, so you don't ever feel drastically unprepared anyway. No. And when I go to a trial, I have my little notes, and as long I don't care how I do at that trial. All they're going to do is going to tell me this is what you need to work on. And it's great, because you don't want it to be over, right? So if you go to a trial and something new happens and you didn't know how to handle it, hey, guess what? Next week, I'm going to work on this. It gives me something to work on. It's not a failure. Once I removed expectations from any of my training, it's opened up a whole new world. And I do not ever want to put that pressure on my dog. I do not ever want to take away the fun. That is the most important thing, is our relationship. It's the most important thing. Have you found yourself feeling a burden of expectations of other people along the way as well?
Yeah, but it's just, you form all types of, over the years, you have all kinds of friends, and they know my other dog, right? And it's just, you go to competitions and they're like, oh yeah, you're gonna, and it puts a lot of pressure on yourself. And I don't want to have that pressure. I don't want anything to do with what I did with a previous dog. I want to go to a competition to have fun with this dog. I want to be in my own world. I want to focus on the things that we're working on. And they're going to be different than what other people are working on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be our time, our journey, our enjoyment. That's it.
I love that. Jessica, how have you handled disappointment from a trial experience?
Good question. We've had some recently, for sure. And I will say that I will allow myself to feel disappointment, but I never, like what we talked about early, I never want to make it my dog's problem. Yuri loves doing this so much. I mean, if I tell him in the house, we call it, hey, want to go play nose nose? And he like shoots up out of bed and he's like, yes, let's go play. For him, regardless of how we do, it's a great day because he got to play, and he and I don't get to play together like that frequently at all. So the second he comes out of his crate, he puts both his paws up on my shoulders and he puts his head underneath my chin, and he just like does like a hard press with the top of his head into my chest. And then he looks up at me and licks my face. So I know he really, really enjoys this time. So when we don't pass and we get that no, that dreaded no, I'm like, well, you know, I'm still going to get that hug before he goes back in his crate. And I'm going to get that other hug, I know, when he gets out again. So, and I'll never forget, I had the best no actually way back at that trial in Vegas. And I think, Michelle, you were there too.
Oh, yeah.
When you arrived late at. Our first element was containers, and we have always rocked containers. But for whatever reason, he alerted on the container next to the hot one, and the judge said no. And I looked at her and I said, what? And she looked at me and she looked up and she goes, no, it's the right name. And I've seen you guys before. She's like, yeah, no, it's a no. I'm shocked too. And then she and I just laughed walking out to the door to our next element where he nailed vehicles. But she and I were just super surprised, and I couldn't be upset. I was just kind of in shock. But he had a great time. And I think there's video of us walking away and he's jumping up and down at my side at whatever, 6, 7 years old, while having a blast. And I'm like, well, I can't stay disappointed with that sort of behavior.
Oh, that's really beautiful. So, I love that, especially since that was a tough day otherwise.
Yes. Oh yeah, it was a tough day, a tough trial. But I mean, we've had other disappointments, you know, where it's like, hey, you know, we really didn't perform well. And when I get to the end of the day and we're back in the hotel room or back in the house and I get a chance to kind of reflect, I'm like, it's not that we didn't have a good day, it's that I didn't read him properly. So It really isn't my dog's problem. It's really my fault. Did I read too much into it, or did I just blurt alert, or what happened? It was my fault at the end of the day.
Miscommunication.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. I mean, our first time out, I thought we were going to get it. And we missed the NW3 title by one hide, and same judge that gave me my no and that lovely Vegas trial. And she, again, it's funny, our relationship is she laughs at us when we compete because he does silly things. In this one, he jumped on top of a couch because there was a cat that had been laying there, and he just could not get away from that cat smell. Like, glanced at odor, and I couldn't get him over there before our time clock ran out. So
shoot.
You know, she's like, I just remember you picking him up by the harness and pulling him off the couch. So
gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Exactly. So I try to handle my disappointment with what funny or unexpected things happened that I took away as more of a positive things, like getting pronounced at a trial or something. So I try to kind of turn it around in different ways, because I think that's, for me, the only way that I can get through it without focusing, because I'll have that tendency to kind of zoom in and hyper focus on everything and be like, I can't do that. And then it really does spiral down for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Thank you so much, everyone. I loved hearing your stories and input and philosophies. I found it really interesting to talk with all of you. Thank you so much for participating with me.
This was an amazing collection of people. I want to thank you all for joining us. I just
Thanks
want
for
to say
visiting.
that for each of you, I just hope that you understand that with this podcast, the gifts that you are giving to the people who are going to be listening, all of you have shared very fantastic stories and perspectives that people are going to be able to listen to and say, I'm not alone. And I can try to come up with better expectations for myself, as whether I'm an instructor, whether I'm a competitor, or I'm just a dog owner, or I'm a trial official. That's a big gift. So I hope that you all really pat yourselves on the back for that, because that's a really big deal. So thank you. So as you can see, this was a really great conversation, and I am so thankful for Jessica, Monica, and Jill for joining us for this roundtable. And I'm also very thankful for Michelle for doing such a great job in organizing all of this and asking some really great questions, where they were able to share all of their experiences, what they've learned, how they may have adjusted their expectations over time throughout their journey in nose work, and how they're able to focus on the things that are important, which is having a good time with our dogs. But I hope what everyone can really appreciate is that all of us go through this, right? That there is this battle of trying to make sure that the expectations that we're setting for ourselves, for our dogs, are in the best interest of both, and that we are not inadvertently getting stuck in all the common pitfalls and things. What is wonderful about this is that Michelle is actually putting together a webinar that's talking just about this very thing, which is fantastic. So on April 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, Michelle's going to be offering for us a live webinar through Setwork University that is titled The Great Expectations, Creating Your Setwork Trial Experience. And again, this is just supposed to help whether you're just getting started in trialing, you've been trialing forever, how you may be able to properly set these expectations so that you're going into these experiences with the right frame of mind, so that you can have a good time with your dog, so you are creating good memories, so you're not, shooting yourself in the foot because you're creating these expectations that are just unrealistic, or they're battling against what would be in the best interest of you and your dog. And I'm really looking forward to this webinar because I think that everyone needs it. So we will make sure there's information about that webinar and how you may be able to register for it on our website, as well as the replay page for the podcast itself. As always, this podcast episode is going to be posted on our Setwork University Facebook page. So if you have any questions or comments, you're always more than welcome to post those there. But thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. It was excellent, and I was very excited to be a part of it. Thanks so much. Happy training. I look forward to seeing you soon.